10th, I believe it was, somewhere along in there, and was then removed by train up to Stalag 4 in Gross Tischau, Germany, pretty close to Stettin, and we remained there until just before let's see, it was February. They moved us out. It was going to move us out and march us out, and I escaped from the march, and along with 3 other guys, but we were picked up just a few days later, and put back into march. Along this time with Polish and German and Russian prisoners, and we received bad treatment on that. But anyway, we stayed with that for 2 or 3 days, and then we escaped from that, and then made our way all the way back to Odessa, Ukraine, where by bicycle and by train and foot and any means we could, and finally we got to Odessa, Russia on April the 4th of 45, and put on a Liberty ship, and we came on home. I got home on May the 7th. That's one day before the war ended. We pulled in Newport News, Virginia, and the next day the war was over. The thing I remember most, I guess, was we had a big banquet for us, and they had German prisoners waiting on the tables, and we were laughing about how they were bumping their heads trying to be so helpful and so on. So anyway, a few days later, I was shipped out of there, and I came back to Dallas, Texas, to an airfield there, Love Field, and started flying the military planes, old War Weary planes. They were storing around different places in the desert, and then anyway, I got out of there and we started training then for engineer on the B-29, and but before I got through the training there, the war ended, and I was discharged. I was discharged on November the 19th of 1945. Came home, joined the Austin Police Department, remained there for 38 years, and retired as a major in the police department. And a few years later, in '95, I wrote a story about my book. Almost 50 years, I guess, from the time it happened. But anyway, I recorded the thing in my book, and I think it's gotten a lot of good compliments on the book, and a lot of people said it was really interesting.
Harvey, is there one chapter that is dedicated to maybe a person or an event that really sticks out in your mind more so than most?
I'll read you my dedication to it.
I'd like to hear it.
I think was I wrote. It says, "To those who have stood so forlornly behind the barbed wire of the enemy, trusting their own will to survive, confidence in the courage and of country and comrades, never doubting the victory to follow. To all the mothers and fathers and family members and friends who so long anxiously awaited some word and the return of their loved ones. Last but not least, to my lovely wife, Evelyn. Standing tall, ever supportive and caring throughout my career in many trying times. God bless America."
All right. Harvey, do you have a comment on this one?
I'd like to say something. To get over this spell about the B-24. I think it's one of the best ships that they had. It was the latest bomber at the time, and although it didn't get the publicity that was given to the B-17 flying out of England, mainly because the B-17, the media was, most of the news media was stationed there in England, and they gave the B-17 most of the positive notoriety, but the East 24 was a faster ship, flying higher and carrying a bigger bomb load. So for me, it's the best ship. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Would you like to have some water? Okay, you can go ahead and turn it off.
Okay.
Like that, a little water. Hey, that was great.
And traveled at night for several days till we got away from the prison camp far enough to where we figured that they wouldn't find us. Then we started to, we were only gone 7 days the first time we got away. And we were captured in Ubarkas, Lithuania. We went over into Lithuania, which was only about 6 kilometers from where our prison camp was. But Lithuania, of course, was occupied by Germany too. And we got help from the people at night. We'd go knock on the door, and if we look around if the place was isolated and so forth. Mostly, it was very rough and forest land, a lot of it, not densely populated. And so we'd pick out a house that was isolated and go knock on the door at night. And most of the time, the people were very friendly. They had no means of communication because it was just isolated out there, and we felt like they couldn't get away to inform on us, you know. So, none of them. Anyway, we traveled that way until we got to Ubarkas. Ubarkas, yeah, and that's where we were captured second. You know. What happened, we stopped in this little town that went, the Mimmel River run through this town, and we had to go across the creek that run in the Mimmel. We had to go down through the center of town, village, yes, call it a village. And before we got there, we stopped in kind of a gravel pit down by the river, and we had one cigarette left, and all four of us smoked that cigarette, and we were down there in this gravel pit. And somebody from the town, a guy happened to see us down there. He thought we were Russian prisoners, or Russians, and they had no love for the Russians either, see. So we went back into town, and he told there's one German soldier stationed in that town, I guess this is a little oversee it and everything. He told him, so he got the German, the Lithuanian police there in this town and notified them. Well, we were walking on through the town and not knowing, you know, that we'd been seen. And just as we got outside the town, I was walking on one side of the road and with one of my buddies, and the other two were following on back. We kind of split up, you know, and of course, we were so much larger than the people there. They're rather small, but we stood out like sore toes, I guess. But be that as it may, when we got through the town, and I was about ready to tell the guys, come on, let's get on together and go on down on this river, and we'll follow the river till we can find some way to get away. Anyway, I noticed this wagon, a buckboard, more or less, coming down the road. Everybody else had been, we met people, they'd just walking along. But this wagon was kind of trotting. The horses were pulling it pretty fast. I didn't think much about it at the time. But anyway, it got up between us, they were about 100 yards behind us, and it got about halfway in between the both of them. And there's four policemen jumped up out of they'd been hiding down in the bed of the wagon. And of course, they jumped up with the rifles, and we were caught. But what was so funny, they took us into town. As soon as they found out we were Americans, boy, they just couldn't be nice enough, you know. But they put us in jail anyway. And it was getting late in the afternoon. When the town people started coming in and bringing soup and stuff to eat, you know, and patting us on the back, and a lot of them they were all Catholics there, and they won't know what religion. Well, we had one Catholic with us, but we were all Catholics that night. And anyway, we could have escaped from that jail that night, but we just knew that those people were so friendly, they were going to take us away from the police. We just felt certain they'd going to do it, you know. Well, the next morning they loaded us up into a buggy, and with a guard riding a horse, and and took us into the little town of Tilsit. And we, through the forest and everything, we kept expecting somebody to run out and take us away every step of the way, but it never happened. We got into Tilsit, and they turned us over to the German police there, and from there we spent 81 days in different jails around. I got down to about 135. You know. So anyway,
Those were the roughest times.
we finally got home.
All right, I think that's good. Great. For the title of your book.
Well, Escape I Must is the title of the book. And like I say, it's an account of my whole story. Some of the march. The march, it was from in February when we left camp. It lasted until the end of the war. But we had escaped and was going back through Russia and so forth. So I didn't stay on the march, but shortly, several days. But then I escaped from the march, and then I was brought back into the march after they picked me up, and then I escaped for the fourth time. And so I didn't go on that march all the way. I went on back the opposite direction through Russia. We got with a train that was taking prisoners and going back through Russia, and of course it was a complete desolation, destruction all the way. The Germans, when they were advancing, the Russians had a scorched earth policy. They destroyed everything in front of them that was left behind, and then when the Russians started defeating the Germans and pushing them back across it for the second time, they pushed one way to destroy it, and going back the other way they destroyed it. It was scorched earth. And people are standing around, old folks, and just desolation.